Hey, I'm Natasha Neese, and I want to speak to you for a few minutes today about something that's been very life-changing for me and continues to point me in the right direction, the path of alignment with my true nature. Very important because we know there's a lot of distractions out there. So coming home to ourselves and staying true to ourselves is the ultimate goal, in my opinion, because then, of course, we can be more in every other way for everyone else if we're true to ourselves. So, yoga and meditation. I'm sure everyone's heard that plenty of times, but it is really so good, especially when you mix them together. And what happened for me is I discovered meditation, or my ability to actually do it, through yoga, which was a wonderful discovery because I had been trying to meditate off and on my whole life, knowing that I should, and it's so important, and feeling kind of like a loser because I couldn't do it. I never could really clear my mind. My body was always uncomfortable, and I just kept giving up. But what happened for me is that during a yoga class with Krista Holland, my good friend and mentor and teacher, she would have us begin to sit for a few minutes or even just a minute throughout the yoga class. We'd be doing all this stuff, all this balancing and, really moving our bodies, focusing on our bodies, moving our blood, our heart, our hormones, everything. And then she'd have us just sit and taste the medicine. And I tasted it, and it was really good. So very thankful to Krista for that. I then began to really want to taste it more and more. And soon, divine orchestration, synchronicity, a friend came to me and told me that she was going to do a 9-day silent meditation retreat nearby, and of Vipassana. And this particular retreat was called K-Passana, like, how are you doing, in Spanish. And I was pretty terrified by the idea, and it was irresistible to me. It was like my spirit just drugged me there. So I went, and we meditated about 6 hours a day and did yoga. We would meditate roughly an hour before and after every meal, which was a very light meal, and no talking. And it was amazing. It was life-changing. And mostly what I gained from this experience was that, first of all, I learned how to meditate. And I learned that one of the reasons that it was so hard for me to meditate in the first place was that I wasn't really in my body. And that sounds very cliche. I've heard it a million times. But I really got to see and feel what that actually means. And the way that happened for me is that as we were sitting and closing our eyes and being led through body-centered exercises, I couldn't imagine where my body was when my eyes were closed. Now, I know that sounds pretty weird, but try it. Like, when you close your eyes, can you really feel that your body is underneath you and straight, and your legs are here, and you feel straight and even? I didn't. I felt, first of all, I couldn't really find where my body was. I would look down, and it would look completely different than what I was feeling. And thankfully, because what I was feeling was that I was quite twisted or bigger on one side than the other, or like one leg was in a different position than the other, or, I just felt very uneven And it was a little disconcerting. It was frustrating, and it was fascinating. And I like how those two words kind of sound the same, because oftentimes in life, I have found that if I'm feeling frustrated, I'm going down a certain path and finding block after block. Really, if we sit there long enough in front of the block, it becomes a door, and we can open it and go through. And when we do that, it's pretty fascinating what's on the other side, usually quite rewarding. Yes, I was fascinated by the fact that I was not in my body. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think. My ideas are maybe like being in a hurry all the time and sort of being a little bit ahead of myself all the time, right? Or being concerned about everybody else and that everyone else is okay, and, that kind of thing. And certainly trauma. And of course, we all have different levels of that, and it's a real thing. I think that I'm not going to begin to talk about the effects of trauma on the physical body spiritually, and how we are, I believe, spirit in a body, but there's all kinds of things that can happen around that. So anyway, I've had all three of those things to a certain extent, and I just wanted to come into my body. I wanted to come home. So what I began to do was, during meditation, I was sitting there, I would just peek down at my body, peek down. Okay, oh, there it is. Never looked the way that I thought it was when my eyes were closed, but okay, here I am. Here I am. I could even like touch myself, like, okay, here I am, like, and just kept coming home. And as I did that, I began to feel glimpses of ecstatic states. I began to have emotional releases as I was coming back in to my body. Mostly it was very encouraging. The exercises that he was leading us through in the beginning of our meditation, and then he would be silent for a real long time and let us work it on our own, but he was teaching us techniques, and it wasn't anything to do with religion or any histories or lineages or names or anything. It was body-centered meditation. And one of the exercises was just scanning our body all the way through, over and over, scanning our body, every single thing on the inside. I began to develop even a greater appreciation for all the systems and all the things that are just doing their best in here, just, man, it's a miracle, which we all know. And really spending a lot of time in silence, focusing on, my own brain in here. Like, I'm so thankful for it. That sounds kind of silly, but gratitude, it definitely does come as we focus on our body. And another technique that he showed us was breathing in and out of every pore of our body. That is my favorite. I began to feel like when I was exhaling and breathing out, that instead of my body, going in, like contracting, I was actually expanding out. And I began to really realize my energetic self. And he said that as we breathe out, he encouraged us to breathe out to the ends of the universe. And then bring in from, the far reaches of the universe inside us as we breathe in. And said that that's how eventually the sages would reach levels of omniscience, bringing in, opening those portals to the far ends of the universe. I'm not there yet, but what I will say is that I am able to sit. Also, another thing that happened during that Vipassana is that I figured out how to sit in the way that my body can stay for a long time. Now, right now, I'm just sitting Indian style and, on the ground here, which I wouldn't be able to sit this way for a very long time. The way that I was able to sit for the longest was on my knees, like this, with a pillow underneath here. And then I started to stack blankets so that a blanket would be at my ankle so that my foot could go down a little bit over the edge of the blanket. Anyway, my point is getting a bunch of pillows and blankets and figuring out how to sit. And sitting up against something is fine as well. But straight. Keeping your back straight is important, I believe, energetically. And also so you can breathe. You don't want to be slouched back because then that affects your breath. Power center. So I have a chair that has a pretty, I basically put pillows behind my back. I put pillows under my knees. And I just get it right, It's not about suffering. It's about actually becoming so comfortable and relaxed that you don't even really feel your body after a while in a healthy way. Because once you're really, really comfortable and you sort of forget about, there's nothing calling you, your knee or whatever, nothing distracting you, then you can drop into a slower brain wave. I think it's theta. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a scientist. But I definitely could feel this thing just happen. And it was almost like I went underwater. Like everything kind of slowed down. I could hear a little bit differently. I was more in tune with the silence between the sounds, which is a relief. I highly recommend that. And I didn't have to worry about my thoughts. There were really no thoughts happening. And if there were, it was like a fish jumping out of water, and I could be like, oh yeah, there. Then it would just, I could identify it. Oh, there's a thought. Because oftentimes when I have tried to sit, and still, I just get carried away by my thoughts. Like they just sort of seduce me away, and I don't even notice them until I'm like way down the thread of thought. But when you're in the slower brainwave, the peace that overcomes you is so profound that, yes, the thoughts, like I say, the fish that jumping out of water, it's like, oh yeah, there's a thought, but I'm so not interested in that. And it was okay for me to be like, oh yeah, I'm here. Oftentimes when people clear their mind, I have been like, oh, my mind is clear, and then that identifies as another thought. But that was different. When the brainwaves slow down, I was fine to just be like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I wasn't taken out very easily. It's such a gift. It's like someone closed the blinds down, like all around. Just kind of closed the blinds on my mind. So that is a goal. And it does just come over you. And it takes a lot of practice. That didn't start happening for me for a long time. Well, a long time, a couple months. But I was and am taking the time to sit every day. What else? Yeah. Well, one more thing that I'll say about just taking the time to do it is that as I said in the beginning of the video, it helps me align and realign with my true nature, my priorities. The things that I need to do that day will come up, and I'll be like, yeah, okay, thank you for reminding me about that, you know, and insights a lot of times. I will see things from a little higher perspective or a different perspective. And if nothing else, it's calming. It's a good skill to be able to just sit with yourself. And often it's challenging. I set a timer on my phone and I put it on airplane mode so that I won't be distracted by texts or anything. And I meditate for 30 minutes. It goes by pretty quickly. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Good luck.